Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And again, thank you so much for your patience. My name is Wilmarie Newton, and I will be your moderator today. In order to avoid background noise, I ask that you please mute yourself if you're not speaking. However, you can unmute yourself if you would like to ask a question, or you can type it into the chat box. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be archived on CABE's website. And now I'd like to introduce Sheila McKay, Senior Staff Associate for Government Relations.
Good morning, everyone. As I said in the email, wanted to walk you through, or the invite, and wanted to walk you through getting on the CGA, Connecticut General Assembly website. So I would encourage you to pull that up on your own right now. cga.ct.gov. Again, cga.ct.gov. I assume you have that much if you are interested in wheeling around in here. We're not going to be doing all of this today because it's too much, and frankly, I don't use all that's on here. So if you're just going to track, not just going to track, but if you're going to track legislation, that's mostly what we'll be talking about today. But there are other ways, there are other things I want to tell you about, how to know where a calendar is, how to know where an amendment is, and the things that I mentioned. So we're going to start off with that bar across the top. This is where you would find all of your representatives. So there's a full house list in here. And there are all your representatives. This is the full house. This is not just Democrats, not just Republicans. If you click on their name, you can write them an email. If you click on their website, you get the opportunity to see what type of legislation they're moving this year, a little bit about them. There's his Tim Ackert's bio. Tim's a former JC like I am, known him for years. You can contact him this way as well. You can get an understanding as to where his district is by looking at district map, a list of his legislation, the committees he serves on. And then sign up for texts and any type of media they want to get you. So that's that way. And then you can also view the list of the bills here, and then it gives you the party affiliation as well. So if we go back further, that is representative. But I will say again, whoops. There is opportunity to look at just the House Democratic Caucus, House Republicans. The House clerks and the Senate clerks are the permanent keepers of legislation, of the actual bills, the hard copies of the bills, once they come out of the committee process. Someone must own those bills for this to be a legitimate legal process. So that's, and they move the bills into the chamber when they're voting on them, and record them when they're done with them, and any amendments as well. So that's where you'd find representatives. Committees, obviously very perfunctory in terms of this is the full list. I thought we would spend a little bit of time, certainly in the Education Committee. So here's the Education Committee, the committee webpage. And one of the first things I wanted to show you on the committee webpage is there's the membership button, and it gives you all the members on the committee. And it looks similar to the other list I just showed you for the House. So their lists are, that listing is there, and it gives you the titles that these members are serving on the committee. If you go here to this link up here under quick links, this gives you a calendar. So it will tell you when they're having meetings. There was a meeting yesterday of the Task Force on Special Ed. Therese McCarthy serves on CABE's behalf, and they met yesterday. If I went back further, this is that if you can go in the month section, you would see, again, they have all the times that they've met and where they're meeting. And sometimes this is populated in advance. If you, committee meetings must be posted at 24 hours in advance. Public hearings must be posted 5 days in advance. It does include weekends. So anyway, there's that there, and you can, as you see here, look for the day in the week over here on this side. If we go back over here and back there to the, oops, no, didn't mean to do that. We're going to get a lot of oops, whoops as I try to figure this out with you all. Okay, so committee webpage. Committee tells you where the address is, gives you the phone number, tells you how to submit public hearing testimony. Certainly encourage you all to do that. There's always a notice in the bulletin, and we always post when there's a public hearing, you know, in terms of the link to click to post. There is a full bill record book. It tells you all the legislation that came before the committee. There are a lot of proposed bills that never get heard, but they're all listed there. This is a good list to look at. This is the bills reported out of committee. This gives it is just a list, but it does give you a link, which is helpful. And I use that just to make sure that my list jives with their list. And then it's very, very helpful in other committees where, you know, we're following bills in many other committees, and I do always find it helpful to look in other committees as well. Committee meetings. This is where you would find the agenda for a meeting, and they did just have a meeting. Well, no, not just. That was appropriations that just happened. But here are bills that have been referred from the floor back to the Education Committee. The committee did vote out the first bill, and the other two they held, which means they didn't act on them. And as I recall, that was because those bills were part of other pieces going forward, other bills. So come out of there. Minutes. Should you need to look at the minutes of a meeting, which is not, you know, is certainly something that needs to be done on occasion if you've missed something, or with the advent of them posting online their meetings live, or, you know, archiving those meetings, the minutes aren't necessarily always helpful. Proposed substitute language, we'll get back to that after we look at a bill page. There are JF reports. This is helpful if you want to know who spoke in support or in opposition to any piece of legislation. If we went to, let's see, which one is in particular would be a good one. Well, 5003, we all know. Well, I shouldn't say we all know. That's the bill that it still seeks to increase the level of spending to speed up the ECS bipartisan agreement from 2017 on ECS winners and losers, but that's not the language we use. So here are the reasons for the bill. The substitute language is included in here. And then the State Department of Ed's testimony, Office of Child Advocate, which is another state agency. And then here are those that spoke in support and in opposition, and a summary of their comments. And if there are many, and there were many, they are just summed up in that way. And that's is the opportunity for the committee to move along in the process in terms of not having to summarize every single comment. Having a JF report, a joint favorable report, be 16 pages is unusual, very unusual. There's that, but that's a nice document if you're coming into a piece of legislation in a different committee, or well, any committee, and you're not really aware of the issue. You can get the pros and cons quickly, so that's very helpful. And joint favorable, let me just go over that term. Connecticut is unique to any other state in the nation to the extent that we have joint committees. We have the House and the Senate serving on the Education Committee, serving on every committee in the legislature. Frankly, I don't know how the other states get any work done if they're having to, you know, jointly agree on legislation as it moves forward to those House and Senate chambers. We already have that part worked out. And then other events, could be anything at any point. Public hearings, public hearing agenda, a whole list of testimony, and they are linking it here by the bill number. That, of course, is helpful too. But you can find that in another place as well, and I'll show you that. And then transcripts, they do transcribe the public hearings. Again, with the advent of the video, this is not as useful to me anymore at this point. But yep.
Sheila, do you see Anne's question?
I don't see Anne's question.
Okay. So she asks, which bill proposed extending lunch period for 30 minutes for students?
Yeah, what bill was that in? I will have to get back to Anne and find it in my my summary document. I'll need to look through all the bills, and I don't have that document in front of me. But good question. It might be Senate Bill 2. Might be Senate Bill 2. We can use Senate Bill 2 to look at. As I said, we're going to look at some bills. And then there's vote tally sheets down here as well. So it just lets you know how somebody voted on a bill. But again, that's in the bill page, which we will go over. So we've done that part of the process. The office, we'll go back up here and kind of, we're not going to go through all of these, but we'll quickly more quickly go through these offices. The legislature is not just made up of committees, they're a working building. Any piece of legislation has staff attorneys looking at it, has a fiscal impact, so it has a fiscal office, fiscal staff person looking at it, and has the Office of Legislative Research reviewing it for implementation. How did it work in Tennessee? How will it work in Ashford? How will it work in Greenwich? How will it work in Waterbury? That's another situation, of course, in terms of trying to get not every piece of legislation fits neatly into each size town. Has a library, has legislative management in terms of running the building and HR and so forth. But legislative research, I will just point that out. If you're looking for summaries on any number of topics, they're not a full-blown research agency, but there are a number of ways in which you can take a look at what's going on behind the scenes in terms of what here are the questions to nominees of the State Board of Education. Good overarching document to look at. Here's neutral arbitrators, neutral nominees for the education arbitration panels. A whole lot of questions. Usually it's much more specific to topics, but a good place to look. There is in there Board of Ed Taxing Authority. There you go, right down here. That would, of course, be interesting to look at and we have looked at that. I can't recall now, but we did. So there's a summary in there on ECS. There's a summary on special ed. They don't necessarily do those summaries every year. Every 2 years when the legislature is reconstituted, they do have orientation sessions for the new members, and they do go over how the building works, how the legislative process works, and what resources are available, and what the key issues are. And that's the point I was trying to make here. What the key issues they believe will be before the legislature. And again, they do actually do that every year. They do a key issue document. There we go. It's called major issues. So that's there. And at the end of the session, they do these public act summaries, or I'm sorry, acts affecting. So we look at that document as well. That document's prepared after we do our summary typically, but it is always good to double check our work. And it's helpful, again, to look at, the aging committee, the environment committee, whatever it might be. So that's there. And I've gone longer than I want to. Commissions, there are, women, children, seniors commissions, Black and Latino commissions, equity. It's the equity commission. Session items. So in here you will see, it talks about all the committee, their assignments, their deadlines. Committees must finish their work at a certain deadline, so then it can or can't move, whether it's voted out of committee, to the House and the Senate for votes. So they have deadlines. There are bulletins that come out every day at the legislature, lists all the public hearings, lists, click on that, lists where meetings are being held. It's a paper document that comes out, but obviously, as I'm showing you, it's online as well. Here's what's happening today. That's there, and that's on the screen as well. These are committee meetings that are happening today and where they're going to be held and how to get online to them. Notice to members of an actual public hearing for a Supreme Court nominee. So that's that. In session items, I just want to make sure. Okay, so yeah. Again, calendars. So every day there's a House calendar that comes out. The House calendar is not hundreds of pages. It's tens of pages. Right now it is 73 pages long. This lists the bill number, the title, the committee it came out of. This is just a calendar number. And then over here are file numbers, and I'll get to the point of what a file is. But this goes on, of course, for 73 pages. The House is unique to the Senate, or is different from the Senate, I should say. They do what they call a go list. So I just showed you there were 73 pages to a House calendar, but the House is smart enough to know that there's no way they're going to get through. Well, they certainly don't need to get through 73 pages in a day, but they also just can't prioritize 73 pages every day. So they do what they call a go list. So this is what yesterday's go list was. And this is much shorter. It's 9 pages. Still don't get to all 9 pages. But there were a number of bills yesterday that the legislature did. They didn't do this one here yesterday. They started it and moved off. They announced the bill and then moved off it because they had other priorities. But they did the second one down on this page. The Title IX compliance toolkit for school districts. A lot of hoopla, not hoopla, that's too large a word. There was a lot of back and forth on why you would need a compliance toolkit if you already have a Title IX coordinator. Wouldn't they know how to do their job? And this reiterated the person that brought out the legislator that brought out the bill said, this is a guidance document. This will be helpful to districts. It will cut down on lawsuits. So the document hasn't been written. This is a essentially, not even essentially, it is a task force to create a compliance, a guideline document. And we can get into that one as well. We can't.
Sheila.
Yes.
Before you move on, there's a question asking if there's a key for understanding the action acronyms and codes.
No, actually, I don't think there is anywhere, but good point. So go is go. It's a go document, or it's the go list. RA means there's a Republican amendment filed or will be filed. Democratic amendment is DA. JA is joint amendment. Always a good thing to see. Means the bill won't be as controversial. And then there are further down on this list, somewhere on this list, usually, yeah, there's one down there on the second page down there. It says a ref ins. It's referral to insurance. So that's how bills are referred back. This bill originated in the agent committee, went to the finance committee, and now the screening committee of the House has said we need to have the insurance committee take a look at this bill just to see if there are anything that needs to be changed, and they can vote it out of committee and get it back to the floor. So a bill is voted out, as the one above it is, as you'll see here from finance. Not all bills need to be referred back, but certainly that one could have been referred back to the higher ed committee. I'm sorry, the student loan forgiveness. But referrals are the discretion of the screening committee. So good question. Session items, we talked about go list. And then there's a journal, which is, tells me what happened yesterday. Those documents are like minutes of the whole, they transcribe the whole, not transcribe, they list who brought out a bill, who voted for it, and any amendments would be in there as well. List of bills is something you look at in the beginning of the year. Just brings that, it mentions it has a list of all the bills that have been brought out. I think that's about it for documents there. Statutes, we're not looking at statutes. This is an opportunity for you to be able to browse, or I shouldn't say opportunity, it's not working. Well, you can browse the Connecticut General Assembly statutes, Connecticut General CGA, the statutes of the state of Connecticut there, and that's helpful because you just put 10-220 in and you can take a look at that. And you can search statute that's way as well. And then, oh, thank you very much. There are other ways to, we'll go back to the main screen. Okay. So we talked about the top bar there. There is also right under it, the House will be in today at 11, Senate will be in tomorrow at 11. We could talk about timeliness. House does go in at 11 o'clock. They will go in at 11 o'clock. They actually will also do a half an hour before the speaker and the majority leader, along with whoever big bill comes out that day, the leader of that committee. Yesterday, they had the leadership, the House leader of the general law come out and talk in just a daily briefing. It's a half an hour long, and it's for it's for the press, but it's open, it's taped for everybody, and it's on the CGA website. I'm sorry, the CTN website. They talked about the bill they brought out yesterday on a fix for the cannabis legislation that went through last year on the THC levels of things. So the Senate would say that going at 11. They are notorious for not going in on time. They have been much better this year, but there have been numerous days when they go in around 2 or 3. They're a smaller body, so they can get work done more quickly because not all 36 members speak. Again, the House is, or I should say again, but the House is made up of 151 members. Certainly not all 151 ever speak, but you just never know who's going to speak, and you never know how long they're going to speak. These are amendments listed here. This is helpful to me. Certainly, I would hit on the day. I would hit on descending. This is, I'll really just show it to you, but it's just getting in the weeds unless you're really tracking on a day-to-day basis. You have to know your bill numbers. It's helpful now. I've listed it to come up to see if any bills have been filed today. No amendments have yet been filed today. If an amendment has been filed and has been so designated in terms of voted on, brought out. I should just say brought out. That's a House B on that particular bill. So there was an A. A may have gotten voted down, or it may be further along in here. These are not, I didn't organize these in bill number order. I organized this particular list in date order. Again, getting in the weeds. Okay, so let's go back here. But that's how to find an amendment. Here you can watch the chambers on right here, and YouTube channels as well. CTN is the provider, or is a designated agency or what have you that outside agency that works with the legislature. And then here, you can track bills. Those would be your bills that you would have put in for tracking. The bulletin I mentioned earlier, you can be found here. List of bills passed. Not many bills have passed. I think just one has passed both chambers already. That's the one that fixed the special ed formula. It had much more in it, but that file copies. I think I'll wait and talk about file copies when I get to the bill page. How's my timing? Okay. Public acts. When a bill's gone all the way through, the public act is there. It just is a list of public acts. So again, just the one bill at this point. It's now public act number 1. Yesterday's House Journal, today's calendar, talked about that already. Senate agenda is a workhorse for getting their calendar moving. It's typically items that are coming before the Senate as they've been received. Moving down further here. Here is the calendar of events for the week. Kind of looked at that already. You could submit your own bills to track. You do that here, or here, I should say, as member of the general public. You can find your legislator if you're not aware of who it is here. And then this archives all types of things that have gone on with the legislature. There's also an archive page on each of the agents, on each of the committee websites. Glossary of terms, that's always helpful. Don't always remember that's there because I know a lot of them. Legislative guide just lists all the legislators and addresses and districts and so forth. Rules of the committee, of the House and the Senate and the joint rules. Session dates, they're already in the calendar. So that's not as much as something I use on a regular basis. Citizen guides, yes, this is information you might find available, interesting. Find your legislator, we talked about that already. Part of the process, they would tell you about how to testify at a public hearing. This I think is video version of that. Talks about how to enact a bill, frequently asked questions, how a bill becomes a law, how to testify if you want to get a job, and the state legislatures sexual harassment policy. And then this is just ways in which you can visit the state capitol. At the bottom here are other links or other quick links, so to speak, the House list, tours, state capitol police. So just other quick things to find here. And then a link to CTN and the overall state website. Let's go back up. Let me just check to see how I've done with. Talked about that. Okay, so let's go back here. Oh, I'm sorry, right down here, we didn't talk about. This little icon right here says bills. So right down at the bottom, you can put in a bill. So let's put in Senate Bill 2. Let's put in Senate Bill 2. Why is that not working? There it is. Okay. So you put in 2. Over here, you have to make sure it's the right bill. I mean, it says bill. You could also look up by calendar number. You can look up by public act. We now know there's a public act, PA 23-1. We just saw that listed. You could switch this to public act and look it up that way. You can do it for previous years here, on this icon here. I'm sorry, in this drop down box here. And then there's Senate Bill 2 we put in there, and then we'll hit go. So this is a bill page, a bill website page. This is the number, the year, the title, a small understanding of what the bill does. That they put that out in the very beginning of the legislative process, so it by no means is a full summary. It lets you know that the appropriations voted in the last 2 to 4 days. There's their tally sheet as to who voted for this piece of legislation. Here is a just a listing of what the latest version of that is. So that would be a full version of the bill. Because it wasn't voted out with any substitute language, it wasn't JFS, Joint Favorable Substitute, it will be there. If it's substitute language, I'll have to go back and show you that on another, I can show you that. File copy, might as well get into that now. File copy is the language of the bill, the bill number. Bills don't always go by, I mean, they have a file number, but it's not something commonly referred to. So here is the language of the bill, line designation. So if a legislator is debating a piece of legislation, they say, would you let me know what line you're looking at, Senator? And then they say, oh, I'm sorry, I should let you know it's line 13. And then they say, thank you for bringing that where it is. This bill, it's not 37 pages. The file is 37 pages. Sorry, I'm scrolling. Okay, so there we go. Let's go back. The bill is 21 pages long. At the end of the bill, they do a quick summary as to each section, if it's when its effective date is, and then what section it changes, or if it's new. So that's helpful if you want to see if changes have been made to certain section that you have interest in if you have a certain section. So here is what they call a fiscal note, the Office of Fiscal Analysis. They do a state impact and a municipal impact. That municipal impact is only as good as the information they get from school districts, from town managers. If they call your school business official looking for information, that's where we want to make sure that the school business officials get back to the legislature on a timely basis, because this document needs to be prepared and you want to make sure it's accurate. This bill has various impacts, and it's described in the sections below. I don't know that I'm going to have time to find Ann's question about the 30 minutes, but it's definitely it's in here. It's in one of the bills. You know what? Let me just say 30 minutes up here, and I will get back to Ann on that. So here is what I always call the English language. So this is what the Office of this is the Office of which I'm using myself. Where are we? Yeah, so this is the fiscal note still. We're on the fiscal note. So this gives a section by section on the fiscal note. And then after the fiscal note, let's talk about the out years. Here's what they call the Office of Legislative Research. These are the people that put it in the bill into what I always refer to as the English language. So this summarizes in plain language every section. Mental Health Wellness Day. This is actually a quicker way to look, obviously, to see where something is. Just a number of sections within here. So that's what makes up a file. It's the language, the legal language, drafted language of the bill. It's the fiscal analysis, and it's the research analysis. So that makes up a file. Not every member of the legislature can sit on the education committee, so they're not going to know every line of any bill, of every bill for that matter. So this serves as an opportunity for the legislators themselves to find out what's going on, or to read what's going on, how to read a bill, to be able to read the bill, and then the impact of it. A bill is placed on the House and Senate calendars, and the first day it is placed on a calendar, it has what they call no stars, but the stars are really X's. The second day it gets 1 X, the third day it gets 2 X's. When it has those 2 stars, It's then legally before the legislature, and it can be debated. They give the legislators 2 days to read the files that come out on any one day. Some days there are 40 files that come out. Some days there are 2 files that come out. Some days there are 40 files that come out. When they make it through the committee process, it goes to these offices for this analysis. They have a deadline themselves. I believe it's 2 weeks to get the file copy ready and back out to the legislators and put on the calendar. So that's why a file is helpful, usually the full version of the bill. So let's go back up. Okay, so we've talked about a file. These are just different versions of the bill. When the bill first came out, that's a proposed. This is out of committee. That's the language there. I'm sorry. So it was first before the Children's Committee, which is acronym is KIDS. So they voted it out of committee, and that's their version out of committee. And then it got a file number, and then the Appropriations Committee voted it out as well. They made no changes, so the document is listed there. If a bill has had changes to it, the attorneys need the time to properly put may versus shall versus may, if that's changed in a amendment on the floor in the committee. They need that time to make that change and, see if there are any, and some amendments are 30 pages long. Some amendments are what they call strike all, which means they gut the entire bill and replace it with the amendment. So you'll hear them say the amendment is the bill. If that's the case, if you go back up here under committee, under committee, well, I can do education better. You'll see over here proposed substitute language. The attorneys won't put the bill on the drop-down box there you saw of the proposed and committee and kids version. They'll put the language over here because they have not yet put the language in properly. So here's a version of the bill. And these are the bills that were all JFS'd out of committee. This is a way of putting the language out there. Many years ago, if it had substitute language, you did not see the full copy come out until 2 weeks later. You had to ask a legislator to give them your copy, or give them their copy so that you could take a look at the substitute language. It was not available in advance. It still isn't available. Well, they don't post these until after the votes. So if you have conversations with legislators just before a meeting, sometimes you can look at a piece of legislation that's being submitted or voted on. But there's the substitute language. So many people will say, well, I looked at the bill and I don't see that version. I don't see that version. That's because the process needs to be able to incorporate, maybe that's the word I'm looking for, I'm not sure, all the changes into the bill, and they need time to be able to do that and to look at it in the process. So there we go. So I'll go back again. I don't know how am I okay. No. Excuse me, let's just put 2 in there again. So I mentioned, and these are the votes. Fiscal note is separately here. Bill analysis is separately there. It's the same thing we looked at in the file copy, but just a quicker way of finding only that. This is the bill history. This just tells you, not just, but it tells you all the actions that have been taken on this piece of legislation. So it was referred from the very beginning to the Education Committee. I'm sorry, the Children's Committee. They voted to draft it. Then they said, okay, here's the next version of the bill. Come out, and it was referred back to the committee. They scheduled public hearings. Maybe it would have been a snow day or something, although we don't really have snow days. I don't know. How the day that it was voted out, And then this just shows you how it's internally through the process. It comes out with a file number. It may have had a reworking of a file number. There may have been an error. It does not happen often. And then it referred from the Senate floor to appropriations, and they've since voted as well. So when a bill's referred from the floor, it has to be acted on in a number of days or else it dies. So this was referred on the 3rd and voted out by the 9th, and that's timely. So that's okay. What else is on here that you'd want to see? Oh yeah, right. So there's the co-sponsors. Not every member of the legislature really utilizes that section, I would say. And then bill similar, that's sometimes helpful, of course. And then public hearing testimony, all the testimony would be listed there, or a link to all the testimony listed there. Actually, and then, new this year, they are having everyone sign up for a public hearing online. You used to have to go wait in line and sign up online. That's not in this section, but on this page somewhere, there's usually a list of the order in which people will be speaking as well. It'll say list of testimony, list of those testifying in order. Couldn't be more thankful that it's now online, because if you wanted to speak first, you had to get to the legislature at 5 in the morning. There have been those that would get there before the garage opened, and in the wee hours of the morning, if they needed to make sure that their client was first on the list. It was honor among thieves when they had a list out. So that takes you through the committee, through a bill, the file copy, the votes, the fiscal note, bill history, testimony. Yeah, I talked about a lot of this. Let me go back. There was just one thing it comes to mind on the very beginning of the web page. I hate to say this will also look a little different on your phone versus, a big monitor screen. Right here where it says House session schedule and the amendment receipt report, next to here, when they're in session, it will say current discussion, which is really helpful if you have been talking to a legislator in the hallway, maybe up on the Senate 3rd floor of the Capitol, and a legislator is coming and going. You're like, oh, I need to talk to you about a bill that I'm not sure you're going to hear today, but we have an opinion on the Uniform Chart of Accounts. We like to make sure that you hook up, and we can make that happen with placing a phone call to your school business official. And if I'm having that conversation and I hear that the House is voting on something, I maybe have some understanding as to what they've most recently been debating. But if they've completed that vote and they're on to the next thing, after I finish my conversation with a Senate member, I can quickly click on that current discussion and see, oh, they're voting on a bill I care about. Oh, I'd like to be able to listen to that. I can go into the gallery, or I can listen to it on my phone, whatever. But there's a way into which what they're most currently working on, and that would be listed right here. Again, it's not up because they're currently not in. Folks, I think I have said a lot. I think I've said everything that you would most care about at the moment. And if I can answer your questions, I'm happy to do so.
Akeisha, do you have a question?
Yes. Just one quick comment and 2 quick questions. My comment is, this is a lot. I underestimate the work of senators and representatives, around Connecticut. I know that, there are some bad apples, just like with any group, but for the, the folks who are advocating for our communities that are going up to the state capitol all the different levels that are going on with these bills and all of the politics and bureaucracies that, come along with it. I really, I've underestimated the hard work of representatives around the state. I just wanted to say that. My two quick questions. What is the shortest bill that you've ever seen? And when I say shortest, I mean by pages. Like, has there ever been a bill that just took 1 page or 2 pages? I'm just curious.
Yes, there have been bills that have, the state dances the polka. So that might be 2 sentences. The state bird, of course, that's been established decades ago. But yeah, the state dance being the polka was established, I'm gonna say in the last 4 or 5 years anyway. So some things like that are 1-pagers.
Okay. And my last question is, because I've been navigating the website as you were going through your presentation, I was going through the website as well myself. And the one thing that I clicked on and I'm interested in doing is a state capitol tour. But when I click on that, it only brings me back to, I don't know, it doesn't bring me back to anything that says anything about a tour. So can you look on your end and see? Maybe it's just me.
State capitol tours down here somewhere.
Yeah,
Is it
all the way at the bottom.
Here's one here. Oh, you know what? This gives you a tour of the Capitol. That's what this, well, I'm sorry. So here, tour information.
I was
Yeah, you
clicking
went to
on
one at the bottom of the page.
Yes,
So
all the way at the bottom.
Yeah, I would say go to the one at the left there, right over here under Citizens Guide.
Okay.
There is probably something that's also listed that shows you online a tour of the attributes of the Capitol itself.
Okay.
That may be what you clicked on. I don't know, but yes,
okay,
the Capitol tours.
I see it now. Okay,
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Yep,
Appreciate
you're
it.
welcome. Sure. All right, folks. Thank you for joining me. If you know others that
Sheila,
yep.
before we head out, we do have another question in the
Let's
chat
see
box.
Yes. What do we got here? What is the language we should look at if we know a bill is dead? There's no language to look at per se. There is just, so bills can die a number of ways. Bills can die of inaction, as I said, if it's referred off the committee floor, and it doesn't get acted on in X amount of days, then it, I think it's 3 days. I think it's 3 days. Then you won't know, you will just know that it's languishing there. There are 73 pages of bills on the House calendar. Not all those bills will be debated. A bill will languish on the calendar, death by calendar. If a bill dies in a vote, you would see it on the committee vote on the committee page. I'm sorry, on the actual bill page. Typically, the co-chairs of the committee, when they're bringing out a piece of legislation to be voted on, will not bring out a bill that's not going to go forward. So you don't see most bills die on a vote. It does happen, but they want to work on things that are going to move forward. So that's the way that would happen. Yeah, so there's no way to know if something died unless you know the timelines and unless you know that there's been a vote that's actually killed a bill. There's another way a bill can die, and that is if it doesn't get on an agenda. So the committee can have a public hearing on 30 bills and only bring 20 out for a vote. So that's where you're looking at that bill record book is helpful in that respect.
There's a second part to his question. I'd love to know the answer to it as well.
Second part, and I follow up with that. Let's go. A bill that we will like. If a bill we like is dead, is there a way to advocate for? Oh gosh, yeah, for revival. Absolutely. Nothing's really dead. If it dies, they can tweak it and bring it back. If it dies, they don't even have to tweak it. They can bring it back as an amendment and debate it again. Amendments can be whole bills that died and come back. Is there a way to advocate for its revival through the website besides writing our rep? Not necessarily through the website. I would say to you, yeah, you do need to be in contact with your legislator. And you would just say, Senate Bill 129, I'm making up numbers, didn't get out of committee. And we really need that piece of legislation to move forward. And this is why. You got to give them a reason why. If you can give them the factual information, all the better. So yeah. All right. Thank you very much.